Jonah was halfway up Blissford Hill when he felt the buzz of his phone in the zip pocket on the back of his lycra. He was standing up on the pedals and slogging upwards. He considered ignoring it, and then had a vivid image of his mum in hospital. And following that, he had a slightly stomach-turning thought that it might be Michelle, which was just as irrational as every other time he'd believed it in the last 8 months, but he thought it anyway. He braked with gritted teeth and stopped his grinding climb. He caught his shin on one of the pedals as he jumped down and was savage by the time he'd rooted his phone out and seen D.S. Lightman's extension flashing on the screen. "Ben," he said, and then moved the phone away from his mouth to mask his heavy breathing. "Sorry, Chief." Lightman didn't sound it. Never really sounded anything. Michelle had liked to call him Barbie. Exquisitely pretty and emotionless. A lot smarter than Barbie, though, Jonah knew. "Call from DCS Wilkinson. He wants you to postpone your days off to investigate a possible homicide." Jonah let the DS wait in silence. He looked up at the tree-shadowed top of the hill. It was a slog away, but he wanted the slog. His legs were crying out for it. He squeezed the drop handles of his bike with his free hand and felt the sweat on his palm. He hadn't spent enough time doing this recently. "Sir?" "Where?" he asked, not bothering to hide his irritation. "Brink and Wood." There was another silence, but this one wasn't deliberate. He felt knocked off balance. "Recent remains?" he asked in the end, though he thought he knew the answer. "No, DCS says not," said the sergeant, who was too young to understand. His day of cycling was over, but Jonah suddenly felt too old for it anyway. He couldn't remember ever feeling old before. "Send a car to pick me up in God's Hill. Bring the kit bag from behind my desk, and find someone to lend me deodorant." "Yes, sir," Lightman answered, his voice as level as ever. Jonah slotted his phone back into the pocket of the technical top. There was sweat already cooling on him and leaving him chilled. He ought to get cycling again. It was a few more miles to God's Hill. He stayed there, unmoving, for a full minute, then swung his leg off the Cannondale and started to walk it slowly up the hill. Hanson was in such a hurry to climb out of the car that she caught the sleeve of her expensive new suit on a protruding piece in the door and pulled a thread. It gave her a slightly sick feeling. She hadn't really been able to afford it in the first place. She'd bought 3 others in her first 2 weeks as a DC, having previously owned only jeans, tank tops and sweaters, and a few dresses for going out. Suits were bloody expensive, and she resented the money she could have been spending on her unreliable car. Or maybe on an actual social life, which she seemed to have forgotten about somewhere along the way. She tried to smooth the plucked sleeve down while she made her way inside. She wondered if she could get her mum to take a look at it, if she managed to make it to her mum's any time soon. A potential homicide might mean working through the weekend. Late nights and living off caffeine while they caught the killer. The thought made her smile. She let herself into CID and saw Lightman's head bent over his screen. She wondered how long he'd been here, and whether he did anything else with his life. Whether there was a Lightman wife and kids that he hadn't yet mentioned. He somehow had the look of an unfaithful husband about him. Too pretty and too closed off. Unless that was more her own recent experience warping her expectations. Lightman caught sight of her and gave a small smile. "I got hold of the chief. He's going to need picking up and taking to the crime scene." "On it," Hanson answered immediately. "Where is he?" "God's Hill," he said. "He's on his bike." Hanson nodded. She pretended she knew the place well and that she wasn't about to punch it into her sat-nav. 2 weeks into the job, and she basically knew the route from home to the station and the supermarket, and from there to the dockside where they'd been looking at some potential fraud. She missed the certainty of zooming around Birmingham, where she had grown up and then worked as a constable for 2 years. Though she had to admit that the New Forest was a lot prettier. "You'll need this," Lightman said, and lifted a dark grey kit bag from the floor. And despite the time constraints, I'd take him a coffee. He's not going to be that happy at having his day off interrupted. Okay, just a filter coffee, not a latte or something. Lightman laughed. God, no. Have you not had one of his rants on coffee menus yet? No, but I'm sure it'll be great. She put the kit bag onto her shoulder. Okay, anything else? Do you know what it's about yet? Lightman shook his head. Local sergeant will hand over to the chief at the scene. You'll both get a rundown, though if it's not recent, there won't be much so far. Hanson nodded and tried not to smile. You shouldn't smile at news of a murder, even if it had been ages ago. But the truth was, she was delighted.